going to do a review of a role-playing game called A Town Called Malice. This is the Kickstarter version, which I backed, I want to say late 2018. Anyway, I got the physical copy last year in 2019. And it's a story game of Nordic horror by David Kizia. And it's based on the story pillar system, which I hadn't heard anything about before. So this is the first time I'm reading about this. The book itself clocks in at around 120 or so pages, including all of the credits to the backers. So it's a very slim volume. It's essentially a storytelling game with the idea that it's supposed to be somehow horrific. It takes as its, I would say, paragons, series like Fortitude. It mentions Twin Peaks, it mentions Nordic crime novels, where you basically have a lot of oppressed people working in the police departments, oppressed, depressed, everything is kind of boiling under the surface and nothing is like it seems. It's a little bit like Twin Peaks, you know, you have the beauty homecoming queen Laura Palmer, and then it turns out that who's found dead, and then it turns out that her boyfriend is having an affair with Shelley, who's married to Leo, who's a wife beater, and Laura Palmer has been sexually abused by her father since probably she was a little girl, and she takes drugs, and she's a prostitute, and all of these things. So the idea is that not everything is as it seems. The idea is that everyone is kind of weird and has serious problems, and it's important that you embrace this, because mechanically speaking, if you don't embrace the fact that everybody has serious problems and has issues with at least some people that you're playing with, or their characters rather, the game can be broken, because it's a dice pool mechanic that basically feeds off of people's antagonism, shall we say. It is not setting agnostic in that wherever you set it, a place called Malice has to be remote. It can be sprawling, but it can only have a very limited number of people in it, so it's not a big city. So you can have like 10 square kilometers, but there are only 300 people living there. But it's not confined to, let's say, the Arctic Circle, like Fortitude, or even Earth. You can play this on a space station, and they actually say that this is a viable setting, and I believe that there are templates coming out for this. So, how does this work? First of all, it's not like your normal role-playing game, where you have a storyteller, or game master, or dungeon master, whatever you want to call them, that knows the story. And basically then the characters having their own background, ideas, abilities, skills, whatever you want to call them, try to find out what the story is, try to live in the story, try to inhabit the world. That's not what this is. Everyone is a storyteller, and every scene, somebody else is the spotlighted player. The game is played over 2 acts, and in each act, each person is the spotlighted player twice. So it gives you an idea. You start off with making a decision about the setting. There are 2 templates in there, play sets they call them. One is indeed somewhere in the far north. Malice is a small town in the Arctic Islands removed from the mainland. So again, you have this idea that it's remote. It doesn't mean you can't get to it at all, but it isn't something where you can just basically get into a car and leave, and you know, everything will be fine. Then you have to make a decision who you would like to play. And there is a finite number of roles in this book, and I'm pretty sure that these can be expanded upon. But they are archetypes like the medic, the law, the stranger. And you choose one of those. And then with this, you also get your own personal goal. So for example, the medic's personal goal is to save lives. It then gives you a couple of questions to answer for your character. With your skills, what makes you stay in a place like Malice? You're a doctor. Why would you stay at the arse end of nowhere? Then also, where is your home location? Because the town of Malice, in the templates, has a couple of locations that are possible. So, for example, in the first one that I was telling you about, the Arctic Island, there is the harbor ferry. There is a cafe, there is the office, which is the Arctic Fishing Corporation's headquarters. There's the station where the police are, the tavern, blah, blah, blah. So basically, you make a decision as the character where you are going to start. So the medic, for example, starts in the infirmary. So what you do is you say, I'm the medic, I take an index card, I write down the infirmary, I put it on the table. Then I add one NPC to that location. So let's say Nurse Johnson. So he is added to that card and now it's lying there. Someone else can say, okay, well, for example, maybe Nurse Johnson is my husband. And then if the player who plays the medic agrees, this is added. So you can start forming connections, but you don't need to. And at the end of the day, whoever places this as their home location gets to say yes or no, if somebody would like to alter a location in initial setup. So then everybody does that. Everybody answers their questions. And then what happens is you, as each player, have to form a relationship with the person sitting to your right and the person sitting to your left. And there are two types of relationships, a cult and a height relationship. Height is positive, cult is negative. So, for example, the medic can have a height relationship with you, which is based on the fact that he saved the life of someone you loved. So basically, you will be favorably inclined towards that person. A negative one could be, a cult, could be your mum was ill and he couldn't save her, so you hold a grudge. Things like that. Now, I'm not quite clear how this works because in theory, once you've played this game once and may have had not such a good experience, people will probably tend to have a lot of height relationships and avoid the cult ones because the height relationships, the more there are, or the fewer cults there are, the easier it is to get the final event going, which is the uniting event that will bring the town together. So I would probably do it by the luck of the draw. So each person then has two outgoing relationships to their left and to their right, and two incoming relationships from their left and from their right. And then you set up the three pillars, and the three pillars are the body, because it all starts with somebody finding a dead body, like in Twin Peaks. The darkness, which is the underlying engine, whatever it is, that is propelling the town towards ultimate destruction or towards evil overcoming the town, and the event. And the event is the positive thing that everyone is trying to get behind, that people are trying to make happen so that the town itself doesn't get destroyed or its economic problems are overcome or, people are brought together. Now, the event can conflict with your personal goal, but in general, it's something that benefits the greater good. Now, these darkness and body and event pillars also come in the playsets, but you can also make them up. So in this case, we have as an event the glacier survey. So the government has sent a survey team to inspect the nearby glacier overlooking the town. The preliminary stability report of the glacier indicates serious problems. So that's the setback. So the event that everyone has to rally around is to ensure that the event wins, so that you as the town bring about a favorable outcome, which in this case is that the survey team basically concludes the survey saying, well, after all, we were wrong, and it's safe to keep the town where it is, so the town will not have to be moved. Or, you know, think about something like, it could be the opposite, you know, that you say they're investigating whether a dam can be built, and if the dam will be built, the village will be submerged. So they might try to find ways of not letting this happen. And if the event is successful, it means that the dam won't be built and the city or the town will not be submerged. So these are all possible events. In this case, the darkness are draugr. So those of you who've played Skyrim, dead bodies, well, they're vampires. So you can then also ask questions around the draugr. So for example, where did they come from? How can we kill them? And last, you have the body. And the body in this case is the body of a reverend. And his name is Olafur Lindquist. He's 38 years old. And the potential questions around him are, what is missing from the reverend's clothes and possessions? And how has the reverend been blasphemed? So you basically put all of these on cards and you put them on the table as well. And as you will have noticed, you disclose the darkness from the very beginning, so people know what's causing this. There is an option where you play it face down, but that's just mentioned. It's not really explained how that would work with manifestations. And then what you do is, and this is, we're still in setup, you place the height dice and the cult dice as the relationship markers between people. They have to be different colors. And then you put one die on the event, one die on the darkness, and then the number of dice, a number of dice equal to the number of players on the body. And then you start playing. And you can do different things. So you can, for example, investigate the body. You can try and work on a relationship. You can try and work towards the event, for example. And you do this by narrating your scene and saying, okay, well, for example, I'm going to look at the body of the priest to see is there anything missing. And you do this by putting together, well, by telling the story. And this is where I think it's one of those games that I would like to see played, because I can't imagine how this is going to work, because to me it sounds like it's a lot of dice chucking. Because you say, okay, I want to investigate the priest's body to see what possessions are missing. So I go to the morgue and I convince them that I am allowed to look at the body, depending on who you are. If you're the medic, that should be quite easy. If you are the stranger, it's probably going to be a little more difficult. And if you are somebody's, you know, like if you're like a fisherman, why would you be doing this? And then you get one die because you're there. Then, if there is another player character there, you can get one more die. But they have to have a reason to be there. It's not like I can just say, okay, Sharon, just join me because, you know, I want an additional die. And then you kind of like tell your story, what you do. And then if you either add a new NPC or a new location or a new artifact, you can get an additional die if everybody agrees that this makes sense. So you might end up with 3 dice. One for yourself, one for an additional character, and one for an additional NPC or something like that. If you have decided to spend character points, you can permanently add dice to your dice pool as well, but you have to have the character points first. And then you roll. And then you have an opposition pool, which is 3 in the beginning in Act 1, and it is 5 in the second act. And then you count the successes. And if it ties, you win. If you don't win, then, you know, it's not a win, obviously. If you investigate the body and you win, you take away one of its dice and you place it on the event, or you remove 1 die from the darkness. So you build the pool. If you're successful in an investigation about the body, you can either make the die pool for the darkness smaller so that it's less of a threat in the end game, because there is some kind of boss battle, you could say. Or you can strengthen the event, because the event, the more dice there are on the event dice pool or in the event dice pool, the more likely it is that the event will be a success. Or you could also work on a relationship with another character, and if you manage to turn a cult into a height relationship, then the cult die, that was the relationship marker, will be replaced by a height die, which is also very good, because in the end, what happens is that when we determine how likely it is that the event will be pulled off, if there are a lot of cult dice, or each cult die will count against the event. And I think this is a really nice idea, because how are you going to pull off a unifying event that's going to be good for the greater good of the town if there's a lot of dissent and discord, if there are lots of cult relationships between people? They're not going to pull together. They're not going to manage to overcome their own differences. So that's a really nice idea. And here we come to the part where I have to say, I can't see how this would work. I mean, you're sitting there, you're telling a story, and this is also because I simply don't like the concept of doing investigation and knowing from the very beginning what the result is. Oh yeah, there are vampires. Great. So as we go along, we make up how we can kill them. Okay, so to me, this is all too casual. It's like playing, I don't know, it's like, to me, this is not a role-playing game. And I don't think it's a narrative game either, because you're just talking. Okay, so yes, there is narration, but there is no game in there. So, okay, so yeah, I investigate the body, I roll a die, oh God, or I roll 2 or 3 dice, oh, I lose, okay, so we remove 1 die, next person. It all comes down to rolling those dice. And I think this is where it, and somebody might say, well, this is true for almost every other role-playing game as well. And of course you roll dice. Anybody who's ever played D&D knows you roll dice, and it's actually quite dice heavy. There are others that are less dice heavy, but you always have this element of chance to determine outcomes of certain sticky situations, because it could go either way, and it is important to keep this element of surprise in there. However, since there is nobody who actually knows the story, the idea of acting your heart out, of really living your character, becomes unimportant. Because even in a normal traditional role-playing game, I, as the game master, if I see that somebody's really doing a good job, that somebody's really investing in this, that somebody, especially if it's an investigative game, is using their brain. And here I'm talking again about the player's brain, because obviously the characters may not have much of a brain, you know, so there's where the line blurs. And if they are really spending time on trying to understand a situation, trying to find the best way around it, coming up with new connections, blah, 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 this has to be rewarded. And I reward this by just giving them information, by just giving them the success, and not discussing things like, oh yeah, but now you have to roll a die. I've been criticized for this because people say, well, there should be more die rolling. I'm like, no, that's my decision. And I am not interested in people just rolling off against stats. But this is really what this is about. You build dice pools. And I think that the narration will become secondary very, very quickly if you have a group that is really into this idea of investigating, because then you want to be successful. You could also metagame this by everybody deciding to have only height relationships with one another, because then, of course, there are fewer cult dice, or maybe none, so it's going to be a lot easier. So, you know, again, and, you know, people are competitive, and although this is a narrative game, I think at the end of the day, due to the dice heaviness of this narrative game, it's gonna be a dice chucker, and people are going to become very luck dependent, and then you want to improve it. You want to improve your chances. So I don't see myself playing this. If you know of somebody who has played this and has a YouTube video out there so that I can watch somebody play it, I would be really interested to see this, because I would really like to see if it is the way I imagine it. It did remind me in some ways of Beyond the Wall, you know, the building of the town, the making a decision who's going to be there. But that's a lot more chance driven because you roll on on the tables that determine who you are and what your motivations are, blah blah blah. And also they have at least somebody who knows what the story is about, which makes a difference, and they kind of guide it. So unfortunately, the story templates in here are so thin that I couldn't even turn them into a scenario for, let's say, Call of Cthulhu. So am I disappointed? No, I'm not disappointed because I made somebody realize their dream, because this was a crowdfunding, people wanted to produce this, and they've managed to do so. So they've realized a dream, they've realized a vision, and I was part of this, no problem. Is it a game? I don't think it is. It's an idea. And it's a nice idea. But ideas can fail. And to me, this isn't, if you say that this is a narrative, it's a story game. The word game in there is actually wrong. I don't think that this is a game. At least not a storytelling game. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.